Rome is called eternal city? Rome is called eternal city sometimes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In its chaos also.
In a chaos.
It's eternal, yeah.
Please, bring some light.
You were talking about me before? Yeah, sure. Oh, yeah. No,
That's you.
Ok, ma. Allora. That picture, I don't remember if it's 3 months ago or 15 years ago. Bah. Allora. Long distance glasses, short distance glasses. Good evening, everyone. First of all, I wish to express my gratitude to the creators and organizers of Vision and Voices 2025. My thanks go to Visitors. He's a friend since 2010, probably. Yeah. And to Signe Zaluzinska, who never failed me to offer me their support. The excellence of this event is not only reflected in the names and artistic experience of its participants, but also in the project that Vision and Voices announces for 2027, when Liepāja will become the European capital of culture. Liepāja deserves it, I think. A city with 8 centuries of history, a city that finally regained its freedom as a Latvian city after enduring many occupations, a city that witnessed the extermination of thousands of innocents at the hands of the SS. This destiny resembles that of many Italian cities during the Second World War, and in a sense, Liepāja is a sister city of us. Yet this project is also a tribute to Latvia itself, to its precious role in Europe, and to the story of a nation that has fiercely defended its culture and its art through the 20th century, a century so complex and so painful. I'm really deeply honored as well to speak after Michiro Nakayama, after Arne Stackel, after Baba Tetere, after Alessandro Guzza and Dario Vereb, and to speak before David Barnett. It reminds me years ago, 30 years ago, in a conference, it was Umberto Eco who was supposed to speak after Gilles Deleuze, poi c'era Gianni Vattimo and Jacques Derrida. And he said first, speaking after Vattimo, Derrida and Deleuze is like that man at a dinner asking to a beautiful lady, Madam, what are you doing after the hangover? So all these important people for me. David Barnett is an artist whose path we have followed with admiration. Barnett's gift lies in his ability to tell the story of what exalted us and what frightened us. Come devo fare così? Sì. In my opinion, that is a very important photography, because there is Khomeini, the Ayatollah Khomeini, and this picture is much more, in my opinion, than a book, than an entire book. It's much more than a conference. These pictures show and let us understand the importance of a gaze of a man who maybe believes to be a god, but is only a man, a little bit desperate to cannot be a god. And that's the tragedy of the powerful of what exalted us and what frightened us, or what pushed our gaze forward and what forced us to turn back. That's Bob Marley. For many reasons, beginning my small contribution with David Barnett is consistent with my deepest conviction for what we have accomplished belongs to a fundamental chapter in the history and the aesthetics of the photography. So let us return for a moment to the year 1953. David was only 7 years old. Me, I was 4. At the age, he could not have known that Henri Cartier-Bresson had just published The Decisive Moment, an essay which, even in its title, presented itself as a true treatise on aesthetics of photography. Leafing through its pages, readers discovered the miracle of a rare coincidence. On one side, the sharp observation of the world and the perception of its smallest details. On the other, the wildest imagination united with the most precise definition of form. Each image was capable of seizing a unique and unrepeatable instant of human life. That's the decisive moment, of nature, of even the most ordinary object. This is the legacy we owe to the poetics of David Barnett, of Sebastião Salgado, of Robert Doisneau, of Dorothea Lange, and of so many others. To capture an instant is, formally speaking, an impossible task, and yet for the photographer is not a miracle. It is an event born of patience and of readiness. The artist waits for the right moment, when every element aligns, and then the image comes forth. To reach this point requires intuition and sensitivity, the ability to recognize the force of that particular image in which each element gathered before the eye composes the world of an artist in the most harmonious, the most profound way imaginable. Do we owe this entirely to Henri Cartier-Bresson? Yes, no more, no less. For it was he who, standing at the threshold of the 20th century greatest avant-garde, proclaimed photography as an art. He who once dreamed of becoming a painter and perhaps abandoned the ambition after walking beside Jean Renoir during the filming of The Rules of the Game, La Regola del Gioco, one of the cinema's masterpieces. Auguste Renoir, the father of Jean Renoir, was indeed a great painter, but cinema and photography were then the rising arts, the arts of the present, the art of the future. And when he recalled Henri Cartier-Bresson, we must also remember the heart of his vision, the decisive moment. He said, photography can capture the eternity of an instant. No? That's Cartier-Bresson. That's an historical photograph of Jean-Paul Sartre in Paris. There's a picture of a thinker. He is thinking. And there's a picture of a great writer, Albert Camus. It's very strange that Albert Camus died in a car driving from Gallimard. He died with his publisher, both. And when asked why, he answered simply, because the instant is eternal. There is a comic paradox here. In 1946, the Museum of Modern Art of New York announced an exhibition in his honor as a tribute to a great artist who had, so they thought, died too soon. Henri himself phoned to the museum, pointing out that not only was he alive, but he was also in excellent health. Once the misunderstanding was resolved, he collaborated on the exhibition himself, which has to become a great success. I imagine that many of you have seen The Salt of the Earth, El Sal della Tierra, the extraordinary film that Wim Wenders dedicated entirely to Sebastião Salgado. Personally, I always loved Wim Wenders. I think he gave to the international cinema a new look, a new gaze. It was extraordinary. And this documentary was extraordinary. He's a filmmaker who marked an entire generation, the same to which I belong. And he did so thanks to his gift of uniting the reality of art and life with the imagination of storytelling. For Wenders, reality cannot exist without imagination. And likewise, everything that astonishes us always reveals within itself a reality that we recognize. In the case of Salgado, Wenders immediately understood that the tangible reality of his life and of his work as a photographer were so deeply intertwined that they composed a story at once truthful and dreamt as if written by a poet's poem or by a visionary director. That is why the first sentence Wenders speaks off screen to introduce the Brazilian artist is an etymology, the origin of the verb to photograph. Like much of our Mediterranean European vocabulary, the word comes from Greek, born of the union of photon, is better phon, light, and graphein. Graphein is to write. Thus, to photograph means, in its most surprising essence, to write with light. Some artists write the light, others draw it. The world of Sebastião Salgado, with its shadows and its radiance, carries us back to the dawn of time. He was truly a master of all of us, whether photographers, critics, and writers. He taught us that the point of observation of a human life is nothing but a place, precisely the place where the world manifests itself to our eyes, the place where we were awaited, the place that poses just for us, to be captured, to be made eternal. And in this marvelous film, something rare occurred. Rare in the history of cinema and rare in the history of photography. While filming, the photographer and the director exchanged their images. Neither was the model of the other. Wenders understood that Salgado was an artist in perpetual movement, incapable of stopping. The photographer was himself a living work of art. They both work. At times, I have asked the photographers why they choose this vocation. The vocation is something who call you. Their answers were often similar: a coincidence, a change event, an unforeseen circumstance. In the case of Sebastião, he was then living in Paris with his beloved Lelia. No, hai fatto un casino, aspetta. Per andare indietro come faccio? Go back? Yeah. Sorry. Sì, indietro ancora? No, indietro ancora si può? No, forse no. Back again? No, that's... no. Back? Okay. Okay, let's see here. Okay. No, I had a picture with Sebastião and Leila. Oh, and that's back, okay. It's true? Yes. That's Sebastião and Leila, who's the love of their life. Fantastic love. Allora, they were both students, both active and passionate. She studied architecture. He was preparing for a career as an economist, already gifted at understanding the power of wealth, the energy it generated, and the injustice it inflicted upon humanity. Yes, it was evident that Sebastião had a more direct path through which to cultivate his knowledge. One day Lelia bought an excellent camera. The coincidence. That object fascinated Sebastião so deeply that he simply took it at his own. And so after a few years of experimentation, he decided to depart, to leave everything behind, in order to follow an idea that had taken hold of him, Otras Americas. Otras America is a long journey between 1977 to 1984. It was to become a profound exploration of those Latin American lands where liberation theology was beginning to take root. In Ecuador, a priest of the Quichua community welcomed that curious photographer with a moving sentence. "I know well," the priest said to Salgado, "that you were sent from heaven." Salgado paced away just 3 months ago in Paris. I feel deeply honored to remember him here. Yet Gabriel, that's Andrew Guimé, is the priest, Ecuador priest, who is speaking about Salgado. Yet Barriga Arias is still alive. His people call him by another name, Padre Gabicho. Now 75, this Ecuadorian priest, many years ago, welcomed the photographer sent from heaven. In his parish home in the city of Riobamba, he still preserves as a small selection of photographs. Padre Gabicho. Taken with the world's parish priest, he said, but it was not a worst parish priest, he was a great priest. But the truth is that for Padre Gabicho, his friendship with the photographer and his social mission were one and the same. For him, Salgado was above all the human and social photographer, an exile who had fled Brazil's dictatorship, and an artist today recognized by all, except by those who refuse to see. And we don't. And speaking of vision, when Salgado encountered communities utterly unknown to him, far removed from Western progress and comfort, his images captured the fatalism written on their faces, faces of people still free, still alive. Perhaps that what gives true greatness to photography is exactly this, the ability to reveal the fatalism of a human face. And David Barnett knows it very well and makes it very well. For in this, some arts are incomparable. A painting, a photograph, they are never the mere product of the artist's will, but rather the generous gift of the one who allows themselves to be seen, who offers themselves to the image. Yet in such an active and courageous life, one must inevitably meet death. The Rwandan genocide was for Salgado a devastating encounter. Entre guillemets, is Salgado talking. 150 kilometers of corpses, children, mothers, we humans are terrible animals. When I returned, I was ill. My soul was ill. I no longer believed in anything. How many times did I set down the camera just to weep? And yet, he would lift it again, only to marvel at a giant tortoise. Maybe it's a turtle also, no? Yes, in the Galapagos. Ancient and wise, a living authority for Salgado, with her wrinkles and her patience. And Salgado talked to the turtles. When Darwin came here, you were already an adult. Perhaps she had even seen him. Chance and coincidence, these are two forces that shape the artistic journey of every photographer. And thought I fully recognized the value of Steve McCurry's testimony. Whether immersed in the monsoon waters of India, here's him, in 1983, of standing amid the rubble of September 11th, in my gaze, the impression left by Dorothea Lange and Robert Frank remained deeper, more indelible. I feel myself for Lange and Frank more. I don't know why. What a strange destiny for Americans of the first half of the 20th century. The exaltation of people. No, indietro è qui. Ok. Questo è Dorothea Lange. The exaltation of a people destined for wealth and power collapses, and what emerges instead of is the human disorientation of a poverty and abandonment once thought imaginable. This is an historic picture of Dorothea Lange. It was the empathy of a great artist that fixed forever some of the definitive images of the Great Depression. So we are in 1929, 1930. Images more powerful than any newspaper critic, more enduring than any political promise. Upon the ravaged, desperate faces of Americans at the end of the 20th, Dorothea Lange devoted herself completely to the reality of living and of suffering. She captured with bitter clarity the ruin of an era and of an optimism misplaced. What does this teach us? In the case of Dorothea Lange, we are faced with the novelty of an artist who can rightly be called a photographer of history. Her work was not about contemporaneity, nor about a fleeting fashion. It was about giving form to an historical moment, through faces which no future to look toward, that would echo across much of the world. Those images were people, families, women resisting, children overwhelmed by sudden poverty. And beside Lange, I wish to recall Robert Frank. An eclectic photographer, an artist who in time would become a kind of living myth. His story tells of a man who, after the Second World War, left the quiet of his Switzerland, of Zurich, like our friend Vereb, and like the writer, come si chiama? Max Frisch, one of my favorites, of Zurich, to move to New York. Why such a radical decision? Perhaps because he understood that the new center of the world, the true epicenter of the post-war age, was the United States. Not only because they had won the war, they were not alone. The Soviet Union had paid with millions of lives, a tragic victory that weighed heavily upon innocent people. But Frank wanted to break away from a myth. Not historical, not social, but cultural. The myth of America as the land of wealth and happiness, beyond all doubt. Frank sensed otherwise. And so, after a brief period working in fashion photography, he won a fellowship that allowed him to travel for a year across the United States. He wished to discover and reveal the cliché and conformist symbol upon which American society was being built. He thought to unmask what lay hidden beneath the obsession of McCarthyism, for example. When he felt the project complete, he published a book, The Americans. In Europe, he was immediately embraced by a Parisian publisher, the French once again showing their cultural instinct. The Americans bore two signatures, Robert Franks and Jack Kerouac, an emblem that the counterculture, the on-the-road spirit, was rising above bourgeois family and their safe illusion. For this reason, it would be just to call Frank a photographer of society, contemporary to Sebastião Salgado, the photographer of anthropology. Both were legitimate sons of Henri Cartier-Bresson, the photographer of aesthetics. I'm finishing. Why has photography not surrendered to technology? There are many possible answers. Not because of resistance alone, but because Marshall McLuhan's prediction proved true. The new medium does not erase the old. In this case, it was not a victorious battle. Simply, photography is irreplaceable. And another of McLuhan's paradox anticipated the outcome. If it works, it is obsolete. Photography triumphed because it is an art, and the work of art can never be reproduced. McLuhan, a genius of the 20th century. It belongs to eternity. As Walter Benjamin reminded us, true art does not dwell in the present or the future. It belongs to eternity. In photography, the medium is not the message. What matters is the encounter between the gaze and his image. This is why nothing will ever move us more deeply than a Botticelli. The Naissance of Venere. This is at Uffizi in Florence. It's really a painter you feel bad after seeing this magnificence. This is why nothing will ever move than Botticelli, a Picasso, a Goya, or a photograph by the artists we have evoked. And I have not even spoken of Duano, The Kiss by the Hôtel de Ville. This is the kisser, after years. And she showed the photograph signed by Duano, and she sold this photograph for 150,000 euros. Duano by the Hôtel de Ville, of Jeff Wiedener's Tank Man, of Alberto Corda's portrait of Che Guevara, or of Richard Drew's Folly Man, September 11. Yet beyond these masterpieces, which show us the power of the artist's hand and lens, other experiences testify to the uniqueness of photographic aesthetics. Roland Barthes spoke of the punctum, that small details that seems foreign to the whole, yet pierces us at once and becomes the first thing our eye perceives. There is also absence, yes, absence itself. That strange paradox by which what is missing is precisely what gives truth and emotion to the image. And then the force of waiting, to stop, to linger before the possible passage of a breath of life, of a profile, of a cloud, something that will complete the work and bestow wonder. For the photographer is one who waits for the world and does not betray it with haste. And finally, there is that which perhaps most depends our admiration and affection for a photographer is a solitude, that which cannot be defeated, that which is the very condition of his experience and of all his enchantment. And so, allow me to end with a beautiful poem by your brother, by Imants Ziedonis, the great Latvian poet and writer. It is entitled, I don't know in Latvian, Nestai mani vienu, do not leave me alone, a gift offered to me with gratitude by my Latvian friends. On loneliness, I can no longer fly home alone and ask for directions. I can no longer read Per Gynt or Faust alone. I have no strength alone to fight a battle with himself. And I have no strength alone when I leave my feet in the morning. Great joy saddens me, and great happiness hearts me, because the air is so heavy. The night is like a hungry dog licking my soul. I pray to the passing day, don't leave me alone. Tonight, a shaggy bear will emerge from the edge of the taiga and unbelievably will rush to the rapids of my soul. I see him through the evening glow already. Don't let me be alone. Thank you.
It's even difficult to ask anything now.
No.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much. We have one question, and we have more, but I will leave more questions for last plenary session. But I have one question for you, my friend. Which images are more important? Those who are captured with happiness or sadness?
That's very, very strange question, but it's very smart question. I think in the art, for example, the poetry, sadness looks and is felt very much important. I mean, it's through sadness a poet can be himself much more than through happiness. But I think that in some way, in every picture of every photograph in this world, the happiness is present. I mean, I have not met thousands or hundreds of photographers, but photographers give me happiness. Photographers give me a kind of happy life in some way, and a long life and a happy life. And I learn from photograph to be strong sometimes. And this is a very strong art. It's so strong, this art, that is, I think, the one art we contemplate, which taught us the history of the world.
Thank you very much.
Thank you to you.